From K2 News, this is Your Voice, Your Vote with Steve Dunn.
And welcome back to the show, everybody. On Tuesday evening, Congress voted 427-1 to pass legislation that compels the Department of Justice to release all records related to late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Hours later, the Senate secured unanimous consent to pass that measure. President Trump signed the bill on Wednesday. The DOJ now has 30 days to publicly share all the information related to federal investigations into Epstein, though they can withhold files related to active criminal investigations or that reveal victims' personal information. My colleague Wright Gazaway spoke with Congresswoman Maxine Dexter to get her reaction to that announcement.
Joining me now, Democratic Congresswoman Maxine Dexter, who represents Oregon's 3rd District. Congresswoman, thanks for being here on the program.
Thanks for having me, Wright. It's good to see you.
The House passed legislation ordering the Justice Department to release files related to Jeffrey Epstein. It received just 1 vote in opposition. Did that support surprise you?
No, I think once the president made clear that he wasn't going to stand in the way, no one wants to be on the side of protecting pedophiles.
Why did you decide to support this effort?
These women have been fighting to be heard and to be seen and to get access to justice for far too long. And we have drugged this out in the United States, and the Republicans have been barriers repeatedly to just releasing the files. And so I think I was a strong, firm yes, no matter what. I stand with women. I certainly support women, and these folks have documented cases of trafficking and trauma that we as government and Republicans in particular need to stand up for. That was not the issue. The issue now is, will the files really be released and will they be fully disclosed? And I think that is a concern.
This issue has largely been political. In the first Trump administration, Democrats pushed for these records and ultimately pressured then Labor Secretary Alex Acosta to resign over his role in prosecuting Epstein in the 2000s. Then it was mostly Republicans calling for those records in the Biden administration. The president ran on releasing these files, and then he flipped on that. Now Democrats have made releasing the files a big focus. How should Americans read this apparent political nature of the Epstein files?
You know, I would say that this has gone back and forth because, you know, also MAGA Republicans were clearly very intent on getting these files released. And our president, as you mentioned, very clearly was an advocate of getting them released. The fact of the matter is President Trump had the power at any point to fully release the files. He can do it today. He certainly is going to do it. We hope now that he's said that he's going to sign the bill. But the question is, will the Department of Justice be fully transparent with disclosure and with the files? And I really hope that that's the case. But this president, if he's truly committed to transparency, will be critical to using his voice and making sure that that happens.
On that note, there are some exceptions where the department can redact some information. Does that give you any concern that some of this information will still be hidden?
Yeah, you know, I think it's not unlikely related that there are new investigations that were announced in, you know, the period right before this vote came up. I am going to give the benefit of the doubt and assume the Department of Justice wants to be as transparent as possible. And we certainly are demanding accountability and transparency, and the Oversight Committee has been really foundational to that work. So I'm here to support them, and I know that this is bipartisan. We had a meeting with survivors yesterday, and there were Republican and Democrat women there. This is not a partisan issue. Nobody wants our children to be at risk of being harmed and traumatized by people who, you know, frankly are personally building their wealth on the trauma of our children. It is disgusting, and we need to bring it to justice.
Jeffrey Epstein was a highly connected individual. One of the arguments against releasing these files is that there could be legitimately innocent people who communicated with him but were not aware of his crimes. The worry is that it will implicate them in this criminal behavior. What do you make of that argument?
I think there is always a risk that implication is you know, possible, and the goal of our justice system is to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, or in some cases a higher standard, that has happened. And so I absolutely want to protect innocent people. And yet we have to get to the bottom of who's involved. And just because you're powerful or you've got access to power doesn't mean that you should be shielded. And frankly, that is the concern that many of my voters have shared, that they believe that billionaires and powerful people are being shielded from coming to justice because they can manipulate the system. And that is something that we all need to stand up for. This system, the justice system, needs to work for everybody.
This has been a decades-long push for Epstein's victims. Ultimately, what do you hope comes from these files becoming public?
I think these women need justice. They need peace. They have been marginalized, traumatized, and unheard for far too long. Bringing closure for them, and also, I hope, giving us insight into how in the world this was allowed and perpetuated. And my concern is that we in the halls of Congress need to put ourselves forward and holding ourselves and each other accountable for stepping in when people are being harmed, even when the most powerful among us are involved. And my privilege should not be any higher than, any young girl or mom or person in my community. We need to make sure that justice is available to everybody, and serving justice to people in power will help build confidence that the government and our justice system works for everybody again.
This controversy started when Jeffrey Epstein was given a very secretive plea deal in Florida. There was some legislation, some efforts to make that illegal, to prohibit prosecutors from doing that. Have you heard anything about any legislative responses to this whole situation as opposed to just releasing the files?
I am not privy to necessarily those conversations, not from what I've heard, but I am sure that there will need to be next steps taken as a result of, the information that we get, and the truth will lead us to stopping this from happening again, I hope.
Congresswoman Maxine Dexter, thanks so much for your time.
That's it for today's program, everybody.